All right, it looks like we've got everyone joined, so let's go ahead and we can start. Okay. Great. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Legislative Commission. We are going to begin with the roll call on our agenda. So will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Carlton.
Here.
Assemblyman Daly.
Here.
Ryerson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Krasner.
We'll talk to you later.
Assemblyman Wheeler.
Here.
Senator Dennis.
Here.
Senator Hammond.
Here.
Senator Hardy. Senator
If you can hear
Settlemeyer.
me, I'm here. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
hear me?
Thank you. I can. Thank you, Senator. Senator Settlemeyer. Vice Chair Ratty.
Here.
Chair Canizaro.
Here.
Senator Settlemeyer. You have 11 members present.
Madam Secretary, and it does look like I can see here that Senator Settlemeyer is with us, but it looks like he is on mute. So we will mark him present and hope that we can get him unmuted here once we get to our main business for this agenda. So again, we are going to proceed with our agenda. The second item on our agenda is public comment. Before we get there, though, I have a couple of housekeeping matters that I wanted to just take note of. Of course, anyone who testifies today, be it in public comment or during our review of the regulations or other items on our agenda, please make sure that you state and spell your name so that we have a proper record of that and a proper record of you testifying. If anyone would like to receive a copy of any of the Commission's agendas, minutes, reports, you of course may be added to our mailing list by following the links on the website of the Nevada Legislature or by providing information to our staff. Contact information for staff is also listed on the website. Of course, committee members have received all of the copies of the regulations and our agenda items and reports for our meeting today. But for anyone else who's looking for that, you can find that information on the website. With that, we're going to go ahead and move to item 2 on our agenda, which is public comment. We will be taking 2 periods of public comment. This one we'll take at the beginning, and then there also will be a portion of the meeting that will be dedicated to public comment at the end. This would be the appropriate time if you have general public comments you would like to share with the Commission for any of our business or that are related to any of the regulations or other items that are on our agenda for today. This would be the appropriate time to share those thoughts with members of the Commission. If you have called in according to the instructions on our agenda and you would like to speak during this part of the meeting, you will be notified by our broadcast production services when you have been connected and it is your turn to speak. Please remember that we will keep comments limited to not more than 2 minutes per person, and you are of course welcome to submit any additional comments in writing and they will be added to the record for this meeting. If you prefer to wait and speak until we get to that second portion of public comment, you can of course wait for that period at the end of the meeting. And at this point in time, I am going to turn it over to our BPS folks to queue up those who are calling in to speak, and they will inform you when it is your turn to speak. So we'll turn it over to them to lead us through our public comment.
Thank you, Chair Canizaro. The public comment line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Okay. Seeing that we have no callers at this point, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. Again, for anyone who is joining us online, should you wish to give public comment, we'll again take that at the end of the meeting as well. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for the meeting held on June 5th of 2020. Each of the members have received copies of the minutes from the last meeting. At this point in time, I would ask the members of the commission if anyone has any changes to the minutes from that June 5th meeting.
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
And I'm not seeing any, but I do have a motion from Assemblyman Wheeler to approve the minutes from the June 5th, 2020 meeting. And do I have a second from member of the commission? Senator Ratty has seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries, the minutes are approved. We will then move on to item number 4 on our agenda, which is a legislative commission policy. We have a few items on here that we'll take first, and then we'll get down into some of the regulations that we have for approval as well. We'll move on first to item number 4A, which is a request by the Division of Public and Behavioral Health of the Department of Health and Human Services to continue a regulation not adopted within 2 years after submission to the Legislative Council. This request relates to regulation R182-18, and it again applies because it was not adopted within 2 years as required by statute. Members will, of course, recall that subsection 4 of NRS 233B.040 provides that each proposed regulation must be adopted within 2 years after submission to the Legislative Council. And if the regulation is not adopted by the agency within that time, the executive head of the agency must seek an extension from the Legislative Commission to continue or begin the process for adopting the regulation anew. I do believe that we should be joined by the administrator of the Division of Public and Behavioral Health, Lisa Sherrick, who is with us on this Zoom this afternoon, who will make the request. And of course, commission members, we are joined by Brian Fernley, our legislative counsel as well, who can answer any legal questions that may arise. And so we have, I'll turn it over to Administrator Sherrick to give any comments on that particular request, and then we'll turn it over to commission members for any questions that you may have of Ms. Sherrick or Mr. Fernley.
All right. Good afternoon. Lisa Sherrick, Administrator for the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. I'm here today to request to continue regulation R182-18 that was not adopted within the 2-year requirement. Rather, it was completed 2 months late. During the 2-year period, DBPH worked with the childcare industry to find the balance between the best protection for children while accommodating small businesses. Initially, R182-18 and R135-18 were filed as a single set of regulations to LCB on June 8, 2018. LCB identified the error and in turn proposed splitting the regulations into 2 separate files on July 20th, 2018. DBPH then accomplished 2 separate sets of small business impact studies and workshops held on August 29th, 2019. Both of these regulations required errata, much of which was established after public workshops and through negotiations with the industry to make the language acceptable. Both of these regulations received public hearings for adoption during the COVID pandemic. It was necessary to wait for the adoption of R135-18 on June 5th, 2020, before scheduling a hearing to adopt R182-18 on August 5th, 2020, because language in R182-18 relies on the severity and scope scoring language in R135-18 in order to assign grades to facilities. Thank you for your consideration of the extension requested.
Members of the commission who have questions for either Ms. Sherrick or Mr. Fernley. Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have a copy of that regulation separate and distinct from the R135-18?
I believe you should have a copy, and I'll invite Ms. Erdos to correct me if I am wrong, but I think the copy of that regulation should be in your meeting packet as well.
Yes, this is Brenda. It is in the packet. Because we are prepared for, if you approve this at this item, then it will be approved, up for approval today. So it's in your packet under that number.
Under the agenda,
Yes,
so it's not under the whole adopted regulation page.
it's in the
Okay,
binder for the regs part.
so under the bind for the regs, I have 135-18.
You should also have 182.18.
Okay, I found it.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission?
If I could ask another question, then I'm looking under the 182.18A. So is it 18A, 18S, or 18B?
It's 18A, the adopted.
So 182.18A. Okay, thank you. Got it, looked at it, and thank you. I'm comfortable with it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Okay. Seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the request to continue the regulation. So moved by Senator Ratty. Is there a second on the motion? A second from Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any? I'm not hearing anybody opposed. Motion will carry, and regulation R 182-18 will be continued pursuant to the division's request. That brings us to the next item on our agenda. Next item on our agenda is a review of regulations submitted to us. I do have several requests from members, or at least one member of the commission. These are regulations, of course, which have been adopted since our last meeting. The members should have a binder or an electronic copy of all of the regulations, including the required informational materials. This material is also available for those of you who are joining us online as a link from the agenda and on the Legislative Commission page of the legislature's website. We do have representatives from all of the agencies that have regulations on this list. They are joining us on this Zoom this afternoon in case anyone has questions about any of those regulations. We are, of course, also joined by our legislative counsel, Brian Fernley, who is available to answer any legal questions on the regulations. As is our normal procedure and method for addressing the regulations, I will first ask any of the commission members who have not already contacted me to identify any regulation which you would like to have pulled for a discussion. And after that, we will then take a motion to approve the remaining regulations so that those agencies whose regulations are approved will be able to get back to work. And we will go through each of the regulations that were asked to be pulled or held so that we can ask additional questions. We'll have the agency come forward to address the questions that are related to that regulation, and we'll go individually through each of those regarding any approval for those. So I already have pulled for discussion R 135-18, R084-19, R120-19, and R018-20. I think I saw a hand. Any additional regulations? Senator Hardy, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. R135-18.
Okay.
And did you say RO45-19
No, but we'll add that one.
and RO99-19, RO11-20A, and RO12-20A?
So I have added to the list R045-19, R099-19, R011-20, and R012-20.
Thank you.
Additional regulations requested to be pulled by members of the commission. Okay. Then I, at this point, seeing no other hands, would accept a motion to approve the following regulations: R022-19, R118-19, R121-19, R013-20, R017-20, R022-20, R040-20, R041-20, and R050-20. I have a motion to approve those. Senator Ratty has made the motion to approve the regulations that I just read off. And is there a second on the motion from Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, what I would like to do, just so that we have a clear record of all of this, is do a roll call vote for everyone, because I think that will make it a little easier on recording all of the votes for that. So Madam Secretary, if you could go ahead and we will take a roll call vote on the motion to approve the regulations just previously noted.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
for Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Yes.
Chair Canizaro.
Yes.
It is unanimous.
The motion passes. Thank you very much. So we will go ahead and we will take the regulations that have been requested for some additional conversations and questions in the order that they are on our agenda. So we will begin with regulation R135-18, which was requested for discussion by Assemblyman Daly and Senator Hardy from the State Board of Health. And so we will invite we'll start with Assemblyman Daly, if you want to go ahead with your question, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a couple of questions. I think they can be answered to my satisfaction. Just want to make sure. So my first one is basically for my information on section 13, subsection 7, where we try to define serious harm. Most of the things that are in there you can measure, you can see if there is serious harm or the potential for serious harm, injuries, those types of things. But I was curious on what's the standard for serious mental harm? And then, is there a rule book or guide or something that tells you what serious mental harm is? Because that's a person by person type thing, if you ask me. But And then are the inspectors trained to identify mental harm? If you can shed a little light on that, that's my first question.
Good morning. For the record, this is Margot Chappell, Deputy Administrator for the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. I'm going to defer to staff that's in the Southern office in Las Vegas. Namely, Paul Schubert is right there to answer that question. Thank you.
Hello, for the record, my name is Paul Schubert, Paul Shubert. And, you know, the question is interesting in terms of, you know, it's a subjective term when we look at serious mental harm because it's not something that we can objectively look at and measure. So really, and again, we're dealing with children here, which makes it even a little tougher because maybe they can't tell you exactly, you know, how they're feeling about a situation. But how we would describe the situation within a citation that we would make for a facility would let us know whether or not we should look at it at that level of concern or that level of a deficiency that the facility has allowed to occur. So I know I don't have a direct answer that I can tell you, well, here's the measurement and here's the tool we use. Rather, it's going to be a case-by-case basis and looking at the circumstances of an individual case that has occurred that has created a situation where we may be considering serious mental harm.
And if I can, Madam Chair, and I suspected, as I stated, that it would probably be something along those lines. So we're going to be, I mean, there are some histories or studies where people would normally be subject to some type of mental harm for certain things, whatever, or you would suspect it. So it's a reasonable person standard almost, if you will, if that's fair to say. And I'm good with that. I just wanted to get a little clarification. So my second question, if I can, Madam Chair, is regarding the monetary penalties and the interest. So I know there is in the regulation you have an initial monetary penalty which is subject to a hearing, and then you have an additional daily monetary penalty, which my understanding is also subject to interest, if that's sort of just trying to get some information on how the interest works. So if you have a citation and there's the monetary penalty, of course they can have a hearing, but the way I read the regulation is that the interest on that pending a hearing starts to accumulate as soon as you, I believe, provide a notice, or does it start immediately? So it's almost like they got to pay up front and then have a hearing afterward, prove their innocence or guilt or, you know, whatever. But they don't, they have to pay up front, kind of like you get a traffic citation, you got to pay the bail and you can go to court, but you still got to pay the bail before you start. So can you shed a little light on how that interest works? Because and then is there an appeal to the daily monetary penalty? Various things, and I understand and read the regulation and some of the digest about when you had public comment is that the only way you think you can affect some of this behavior is through dollars and cents, and I understand that, but the interest and how it accrues is unclear, or I'm not sure it's fair.
Understood. And if I may, it's Paul Schubert again for the record. And yes, if we charge a interest on a penalty, then it starts actually as of the day that the penalty was due. So if a facility appeals a monetary fine, then that fine is stayed until such time as we actually have the hearing on appeal. And once a decision is made by a hearing officer that yes, the fine was valid, then interest would begin accruing only, again, if we're charging any interest. At that point, if the facility pays the fine, then there's no interest. accrued, and I believe it's 10% per annum. So again, it doesn't start from the day the penalty is assigned or the notice is delivered to the facility that we're starting or we're assigning a monetary penalty, but rather after the appeal process has occurred. If the facility is appealing, then once the fine is validated, then the interest would begin accruing again if the facility doesn't actually pay the fine at that point.
Okay.
This is Margot Chapel. I would just add to Mr. Schubert's testimony that it is not the intent of the division to charge those fines unless we absolutely have to. And so the people who run childcare centers will be given the opportunity to continue to address their issues prior to assigning those as we move forward.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And when I read it, I wasn't sure that that's how it would be done. So I'm satisfied with that answer. I just wanted to make sure that people had their day and due process and various things before they were given a penalty and then had to pay interest if they didn't pay. Because when I got to section 29, I think subsection 3, it says that if they don't pay within 10 days, then you must automatically suspend. But that's after they've had their hearing and it's been determined that they owe the money, and then that's when the interest would start. So as long as they get their time before they gotta pay and the interest doesn't accrue pending their appeal, then I'm okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. This is Margot Chapel again, just to affirm that is the intention, just to have people comply. Thank you so much.
I believe Senator Hardy had some questions as well.
So one of the things that I had a problem with section 39 subsection 6, where a caregiver shall not consume or be under the influence of alcohol or psychoactive drugs while caring for children in the facility. So I looked up the definition of psychoactive drug, which includes chemical substance that changes brain function and results in alteration in perception, mood, consciousness, cognition, or behavior. These substances may be used medically, recreationally, to purposely improve performance or alter one's consciousness. In other words, everything that the psychiatrist uses, for instance, for adult ADD, for depression. So what do we do with the person who takes Ritalin with a medical prescription, with Prozac for their depression, or for their medical marijuana for their anxiety, or whatever they use it for? So a psychoactive drug could be used very appropriately by somebody, and we are thus outlawing people who need their medicine in order to function as they have been functioning very well. So I think overall, I look at this a particular good intention, I'll call it, for this regulation, but I think it has serious consequences, leads to subjective interpretation by the reviewers, by the parents, by the lawyers. And so I think it's well-intentioned, but I think it's got major flaws. I will not be supporting this regulation. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Seeing none, the pleasure of the commission. Motion to approve by Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Assemblywoman Carlton. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. I apologize.
Thank you so much. So I'll just say that we tend to have lots of these finer conversations about childcare regulation in legislative commission. And when I look at the regulations, what I always look for is the ability for folks to come forward to be able to talk about the grievances that are presented to them. And I see a structure here that allows for facilities to have discourse back and forth. It's not too much of a heavy hammer, too quick. It allows for corrective action plans. And ultimately, that's what I think that we want. And then it allows, you know, to Senator Hardy's comment, if someone appears to be under the influence of something, then there's the opportunity for someone to say, you know, to have a contextual conversation about whether or not that is warranted or accurate, or whether it's not, and which parents might be very much concerned about. So I'm very supportive of this reg.
Any additional discussion on the motion? Senator Hardy.
I appreciate the good intentions of the bill, and I appreciate the good intentions of the people who are caring for. I have major misgivings about, you know, the people who are going to be hired are going to have a chilling effect on, in as much as we have up to 8 to 10% of people at a given time are on have depression, and I'm going to take those out of the employment pool. I think it goes too far, and I think
You're
it's
fine. Unmuted.
Thank you.
We were my clients. This one, the
Any additional discussion by members of the commission? Okay. Seeing none, then we will go ahead and, Madam Secretary, if you could, we'll do a roll call vote just so we can be clear where everyone is.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
I'm sorry, yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
No.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
No.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
I'll be a no.
Senator Hardy,
No,
Senator Settlemeyer,
Nay.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Yes.
Chair Canizaro.
Yes.
You have 7 in favor and 5 against.
Thank you. Motion passes, regulation is adopted. We will, thank you very much for those of you from the State Board of Health for joining us. We appreciate it. We will move then to the next item that has been requested for some additional discussion. It is Regulation R045-19 from the Board of Applied Behavior Analysis. And we have Senator Hardy who had some questions. So we'll turn it over to you, Senator Hardy, to go ahead and ask those questions and go from there.
thank you, Madam Chair. On the behavioral or the applied behavioral analysis type folks, page 5, section 3, subsection 4, subsection A, it talks about bringing somebody in to be able to evaluate their moral character. I understand that we all have an understanding of what moral character is or isn't. And the good thing about that is we probably disagree about what goalposts or what fences are around that. So I think it's problematic when we start looking at, quote, moral character. Does that mean that the person isn't married but living with somebody? Does that mean that somebody did a speeding ticket? Does that mean somebody voted for the wrong person? Because we hear that in the legislature all the time, that we have a moral right for this or moral right for that. So how is a board supposed to, what are the parameters for, quote, bringing somebody in and interviewing them for, quote, moral character? How do we determine that? I'm sure Brenda or someone can help us with that quote definition and how we can do it.
Hi, this is Jennifer Frischman. I'm with Aging and Disability Services. I serve as the Quality Assurance Manager for the division. However, I'm the unofficial Executive Director of the Board of Applied Behavioral Analysis. With me today, I have President Dr. Bridget Fernapple with us as well, and she might be able to answer some of those questions. Dr. Fernapple?
Hi, Dr. Fernapple, for the record. Thank you for your question, Mr. Hardy. In terms of moral character, what we really look at is whether or not they are practicing in alignment with our national regulations. And so it's kind of it's not necessarily, marriage or things like that. It's kind of bound more to our ethical practice and what is defined for us by way of our national practice. And so you will see other language in the bill as well, deferring to the board. It's the BACB, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. And so as ethical practitioners, that's really what we rely on in terms of whether or not someone is fit to practice or someone is fit to carry a license. So have they practiced or have they passed the exam? Do we have any ethical complaints against them? Or is there a history of, questionable behavior, those sorts of things?
So dumb question, why didn't you put that in instead of moral character that doesn't have that definition?
I think when we were originally adopting a lot of these regulations, because we are a new board, a lot of the language was taken from the psychology board. And so a lot of this is carryover from what we had with our previous regulations. And then, part of this process is cleaning a little bit of that up. So, and this is, to be honest with you, a conversation that the board has had in terms of operational definitions of moral character. And so I appreciate that you've pointed this out.
I guess I'm supposed to respond and say, then how come you didn't say in alignment with our accepted ways of practicing that are understood that you have to maintain the ethical practice and the competency practice of the training that you were given, as opposed to, quote, moral character, because you deliberately put in moral character separate and distinct from how you're judged by how you practice. It's a separate line.
This is Jennifer Frischman for the record. And I think to Dr. Fernapple's point, this is a relatively new board. This was a board that was created during the 2017 legislative session. The regulations had to be, we did emergency regulations, we have done temporary regulations, and then these are now our permanent regulations. And as she indicated, we copied a lot of that from the Board of Psychological Examiners, who previously licensed the behavior analysts and assisted behavior analysts. I'm aware that in previous discussions, I know Assemblywoman Titus has brought this up regarding moral character, fitness for duty, fitness for practice. And I think that's something that we can certainly take into consideration to put in that verbiage that you indicated. Right now, as Dr. Fernapple said, that is something that we look at when we look at applications and processing, is that have they had complaints against their license? Have they had other things in their background that might suggest that they are not, quote, fit to practice and are not following the ethics of the national board? So I think that's absolutely something that we can take into consideration, and appreciate the feedback.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
This actually, we harken back to applying for a bar license, because we have very similar, and I don't know that it would be phrased necessarily the same way. I think it's character and fitness, and you have to have a reputation for good character in order to be confirmed for a bar license. And that can be everything from whether you have academic complaints for, students who may have plagiarized something, to if you have past criminal history, to if you have past financial issues. Those kinds of things are typically looked at when granting a bar license. So for me, I guess I don't know that I had the same concern or reaction to that, because I think this is fairly standard. I don't know if there are other areas. I know you mentioned that this came from another board, I think of I can't remember if you said psychiatry or psychology. I don't know if they use the same language in terms of moral character, if we have other boards that use the phrase moral character. I know we have something very similar in regards to law licenses. And so I didn't actually have a lot of heartburn or concern over that phraseology. And I guess my question, or if anybody knows, and I don't know the answer, if that particular language is used in other board certifications or not.
Madam Chair, it's Kevin Powers.
Yes, Mr. Powers, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Kevin Powers, General Counsel, LCB Legal Division. I may be able to provide some elaboration on the points that the chair was just highlighting. The term moral character is used in a significant number of the regulatory chapters of the boards. One of the first professions that was regulated by license was the medical profession, and that started to occur in the late 1880s. The first Medical Practice Act nationally used the term good moral character as a standard for the licensing board to determine whether that person was fit to practice that profession based on the professional standards that were applicable to that profession. Because that was used in the early Medical Practices Acts, the term good moral character has been interpreted by case law for the last century plus. And so it has a significant legal term of art interpretation to it by the courts. So good moral character is a term that is used in the Board of Medical Examiners chapter in NRS and in NAC, and in the Board of Dentistry and in other professional regulatory licensing boards. So again, what good moral character means: fitness to practice that profession under the professional ethical standards for that profession. So it varies by profession, but there are clear ethical standards for each profession, whether you're a medical doctor, a dentist, or in this case, this type of regulatory agency. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Senator Hardy.
Thank you for recognizing me again. I would point out that we're going to hear a veterinarian regulation that uses Kevin's words, good moral character, in RO 99-19. And it says good moral character. So the state of the art is not moral character. The state of the art is good moral character. So why are we putting in moral character as opposed to good moral character? I think if you're going to copy something, then you copy the state of the art verbiage. And, I'm not going to use the word excuse, but the rationale for this is we copied somebody else who also, but did they say good moral character or did they say moral character? I know I'm beating this up, but it seems to me if we're going to make something that has the force of law, then we probably ought to do it the way it's supposed to be done. And as Kevin has told us, it's good moral character as opposed to moral character. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Ratty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been participating, we wrapped up most of our work, but with Senator Dennis and several others in the state's efforts of the interstate licensing consortium looking at professional licensing and some of the concerns. And I will say that within that forum at some of our national meetings, that there's concern about these terms, good moral character, moral turpitude, and where they live in the licensing laws and regulations and how they're being wielded by some licensing boards and in effect being wielded at some populations more than others. In some cases, serving as a barrier for people with a criminal history to get back into some sort of licensed position, to just disparate use for people of color, to all different kinds of things. So I'll just say that there's a national movement towards trying to, wherever possible, define these much more specifically, and understanding what Mr. Power says, that there is case law that is helpful, taking discretion out wherever possible. So I think this is a conversation that we'll continue to have. We just had one at the Health Committee as well, where I believe the Health Committee chose to send a letter to the Legislative Commission to say, hey, we'd really like to see more definition on these moving forward. So I'm not proposing that we solve this today. I'm comfortable voting yes on this regulation because the party is getting started and they need to get going, and there is the case law. But I do think that one of the things that we're going to continue to see, and probably the Commerce Committee will end up having conversations about, is how we deal with moral character and moral turpitude, and more broadly across all of the boards, to make sure that everywhere that it can be defined more clearly, it is defined more clearly, and that it is specifically necessary for the health and safety of the public. So again, I don't think we should solve this today, but I do think there's a bigger issue here. It's not just about this one board, it's about all the boards, and there's a more comprehensive fix that we should start working towards. Thank you. But I'll be voting yes.
Additional questions or comments from members of the commission?
Madam Chair. I'll be the red flag vote. No, thanks.
Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve this regulation? Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, and a second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could, we will go ahead and do a roll call.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krausner,
No.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
No.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
No.
Senator Hardy,
No.
Senator Settlemyre,
Nay.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Yes.
Chair Canizaro.
Yes.
You have 7 in favor and 5 against.
Motion passes. The regulation is adopted. Thank you, everybody, for being able to answer all of our questions on that one. We are going to go ahead and move to our next regulation for consideration from the State Environmental Commission. It is R084-19, and a request from Assemblyman Daly to pull that regulation. So we will turn it over to you, Assemblyman, to go ahead and proceed with your questions and go from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess the first baseline question, and I know reading some of these regulations and statutes and various things, you don't see all of the parts. So when one part gets deleted, if it's covered by someplace else. So I just wanted to make sure on a couple of things. And the first one is in section 5, where the language is being deleted. And I recognize that the term conditionally exempt small quantity generator is being replaced with the new term. But the two sections of NEC that are also being deleted that they wouldn't have to comply with, they're being deleted, has to do with restrictions for those types of facilities when they're in a floodplain or wetlands. So are they still going to be subject to those two provisions of the existing NAC somewhere else that I didn't catch? Or when you delete that language, a small, or what do they call it, a very small quantity person now, the new term that they have, are they not going to be subject to those new requirements in regards to floodplains and wetlands?
Madam Chair, for the record, Darren Winkleman with Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. Thank you. So those regulations at the state level for us are handled through EPA. So those are sections that are being deleted for cleanup, but industry that's still in wetland area would be handled through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
So when they're being deleted here, the new term that's given to the conditionally exempt, or now it's a very small hazardous waste generator. This only applies to cleanup, so help clarify there. So people that are covered by it now are not going to be covered under this regulation?
They still will be covered under this regulation.
In another section?
I believe I'd have to go back and find that information out for you and what section it is, because that is still falls under, like I said. Was I muted during that conversation? I'm sorry if I was muted.
I believe you were.
No, sorry about that, sir. Yeah, they are still covered under this regulation. I'm not sure exactly what section they were. I'd have to go back and get that section for you. But they are covered under the US EPA side.
Okay. And I have a couple more questions if I can, Madam Chair. So essentially, when I look at these, and maybe maybe I'm paranoid, but who knows? So when I look at the feds changing some of their standards and regulations and various things, and then we're basically adopting with not 100%, but basically reflecting what the federal requirements are. So is this changes in here, are they going to lower, remain the same, increase the safety standards on hazardous materials in the state? Because I wouldn't want to see any lowering of the standards by us adopting the federal standard. You hear all the time about the elimination of regulations. Regulations are put in place for a purpose. They're vetted. They go through a lot of scrutiny. But if we're lowering the standards in the state of Nevada, I would have concern with that. So I know there's reference to that in Section 4, Section 9, 10, 11, 15, where we're adopting the federal standards. Is that going to change or even marginally the levels of standards that we currently have in the state?
Madam Chair, for the record, Darren Winkleman, I'm going to defer to Skylar Jones on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. This is Skylar Jones for the record. The regulations are not less stringent than they were before. We actually have opted to not adopt a few of the provisions that we thought were making the hazardous waste regulations less stringent than we would like to keep them. And so there are a few provisions that are listed that we have chosen not to adopt to make sure that we ensure that our regulations stay up to par and are protective of the environment and public health.
And I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure to have that on the record. I did reach out to a couple of people and they didn't see any red flags. And I do see several places in the regulations, when you read it, you say we're adopting code of federal regulations, whatever it is, except for this section. So I'm assuming that's the provisions where we say, hey, you know, that's lowering what we already have. We're not going to make that change. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to have that on the record. Two other quick questions. I believe it was section 13, where we're deleting language again, where they have to provide a notice where there's a delivery. And I understand it's only by railroad if that delivery is being deleted. But I know we've had issues recently, some of you may recall, I'm sure, with secret shipments to the state of Nevada. So why would we want to delete that requirement to report materials or hazardous materials that have been delivered by any method? Although this only calls for notification by rail.
Hello, Assemblyman Daly. This is Greg Lovato, NDEP Administrator. So just to start to answer your question, so the materials that you may have been referring to there may have been shipments of plutonium by the Department of Energy. So those are actually outside the scope of our hazardous waste regulations. Those are regulated under the Atomic Energy Act as well as the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. And so those, basically the Atomic would not have received notification of those. But then with respect to your, specific question about whether we've been notified and whether that's changing, I'll shift over back to Skylar Jones.
Thank you. This is Skylar Jones for the record. So we have actually moved to an electronic manifesting system. So every manifest, every waste shipment of hazardous waste is actually being recorded, and we can go onto the database at any point in time and search those manifests and make sure that we know what is going in and out of our state.
Very good. So that's just a cleanup measure because you've already got it covered in another fashion somewhere else in the rest of your stuff. That's like I see. We don't see every single piece of it. So I'm just trying to figure out how the puzzles went to get pieces of the puzzle fit together when I see a deletion like that. My last question, if I can, is and probably a similar answer. There's a deletion for the fee for processing review of applications. So is the review no longer happening, or there'll still be a review? It's just a different process, or it's included in something else? Notice you, and I don't have the section here for that one, but the deletion of the fee for processing review of application.
This is Skylar Jones for the record. I believe you're referring to the fee that we had in our regulations for processing a variance. Those variances are actually variances from federal regulations, which we do not process. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, processes those. So we have removed those regulations for clarity and to minimize confusion.
Okay. Those were all my questions, Madam Chair.
Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission?
And I can make a motion to approve if that's in order.
Yep, I'm not seeing anyone else who has questions or comments. So we do have a motion by Assemblyman Daly. And is there a second from Senator Dennis? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Chair, if you could go ahead and we will do a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton, Yes. Assemblyman Daley,
Yes.
Mr. Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Yes.
Chair Canizaro,
Yes.
and it is unanimous.
The motion carries and the regulation is adopted. We are going to take just a moment because I was notified that I actually inadvertently had left off the regulation that had been continued, R182-18 from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health, but I did not read that in the consent agenda for the remaining items. We did not have a request to pull that one. This was the runner or the members of the committee will remember that this was the regulation that was requested to be continued. It should have been included in our consent agenda since we did not have a request to pull this for individual consideration. But at this point in time, if there is no additional questions or concerns from members of the committee or of the commission on this one, I would accept a motion to approve our 182-18 from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health.
So moved.
So moved by Assemblywoman Carlton. Is that a second from Senator Ratty? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote just to make sure we have a clear record of that, Madam Secretary.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daley,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Yes.
Chair Canizaro,
Yes.
and it is unanimous.
Thank you so much. So that regulation is also deemed passed and will be adopted. So thank you, members of the commission, for allowing me to jump in there with that one. We are going to move back to the ones that were pulled for individual consideration. The next item on our agenda that was requested for some additional conversation was R099-19 from the Nevada State Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners, and Senator Hardy had requested for that one to be pulled. So we'll turn it over to you, Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was to point out that Kevin Powers' language is in that is of good moral character. And so I think it's consistent with what we were doing and what we were talking about, consistent with the original intent. So I'm comfortable with having people use the same things that have been proven and have it be used, and it's not being changed, by the way. It is just included in it. So I am comfortable with the regulation as it's proposed.
Any additional discussion or questions from members of the commission? Seeing none, we will go ahead and is there a motion to adopt R099-19 from the commission? Moved by Senator Hardy. Is there a second? Second from Senator Ratty. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote for this regulation.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblywoman Carlton. Assemblywoman Carlton. Assemblyman Daly.
Yes.
Speaker Frierson.
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krausner.
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler.
Yes.
Senator Dennis.
Yes.
Senator Hammond.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty.
Yes.
Chair Canizaro.
Yes.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton. You have 11 in favor and 1 not voting.
Madam Chair, I'm here. I got bumped out for a second, but I'm back. I'm feverishly, I made it.
We're glad to have you back.
Yes, is my answer.
Okay, so that regulation then is unanimous and will be adopted. We will move to the next item on our agenda to request for some additional consideration, which is our 120-19 from the State Environmental Commission. That was a request from Assemblyman Daly. So Assemblyman Daly, if you would, please go ahead and we will go from there.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Very similar question to the last one from the Environmental Commission are the regulations that we're adopting in relation to the federal CFRs that have been adopted going to change or lower the standards of air quality in the state in any fashion? Or did we do the same thing as you mentioned before that if it was going to lower it, you said we're not accepting that or not adopting that part of the regulation? Just wanted to, very, very similar question to the last regulation. Want to make sure we're maintaining the standards that we have in the state of Nevada already.
Good afternoon. This is Danilo Dragoni with the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. That's an excellent question. As we evaluate these federal rules as the EPA is approving them, one of the main questions that we ask ourselves with the air program is what's impact with the Nevada air quality. And so as we did also with this batch of regulation, we deem that none of these regulation is significantly impacting air quality in Nevada. If that was the case, we would have probably taken actions at the time when EPA was approving this regulation and possibly taking action through a state regulatory process. But currently, we haven't seen any of these rules impacting air quality in Nevada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was what I was looking for. Like I said, we don't want to have the feds change regulations that then impact air quality in the state of Nevada. I know we're allowed to have regulations higher than the feds. We just can't have them be lower. So I just want the state levels that we've enjoyed to be maintained at the very least. That was it. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I can make a motion unless someone else has a question.
Additional discussions or questions from members of the commission? Seeing none, there is a motion from Assemblyman Daly to adopt our 120-19. Is there a second from members of the commission? Senator Ratty. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Yes.
Assemblywoman
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly.
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Yes.
Chair Canizaro,
Yes.
and it is unanimous.
Great, thank you. And that motion passes. The regulation will be adopted. Okay, moving on to our next items on our agenda for additional consideration for regulation are R011-20, which was a request by Senator Hardy from the State Board of Health. And then we'll do that one first, and then R012-20, also from the State Board of Health. Also a request from Senator Hardy. So Senator Hardy, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a timing question. We talk in this bill in the regulation about 48 hours before or no later than 48 hours. And my question for the folks who wrote it is, how does the 48 hours and the 72 hours, 72-hour hold, as it were, how do those two things mesh, or are they disparate and they don't, are they apples and oranges? Can you kind of describe the difference?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Hardy. This is Stephen Wood from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. If I could, I'd like to defer that question to our State Psychiatric Medical Director, Dr. Leon Raven, who should be on the line.
This is Leon Raven, Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Dr. Hardy, thank you for your question. I was wondering if you could direct me a little closer to the specific section of the regulation that you just referenced.
So looking at Section 8, for instance, no later than 48 hours after receiving an application. So through the bill, we're talking about 48 hours as opposed to 72. And then, so are we making a decision at 48 hours, or are we saying that's part of the 72 hours if they're a danger to themselves or others? Where's the clock start? Where does it end? And is it changing the 72 hours to 48 hours? I'm just kind of confused about how it relates to the 72-hour holds.
So the hold decision is not going to be affected at all. Or the 48 hours, the provision that I see is strictly for reporting purposes. So it is for data gathering purpose, but the decision on petitioning for involuntary commitment to the facility still remains within 72 hours from the beginning of the hold. So as you look at the Section 8, it is pretty much meant to promptly provide data as required by law on patient's disposition.
So the theory is by 48 hours, you have to set everything in motion if you're going to keep a person for 72 hours or beyond 72 hours?
Again, it's the 42 hours is a data collection time frame. But it does not affect the decision on proceeding with the application for involuntary admission of the person alleged or to be person in mental health crisis. So those 48-hour requirements are only applicable to the point when the decision has been made, whether or not to pursue involuntary commitment or discharge the person from the mental health facility, and well, again, that time frame does not have any impact on the decisions on whether or not somebody needs to be placed in the psychiatric facility against their will or not.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional questions or requests from members of the commission?
Move to approve.
I don't see any, and I do have a motion from Senator Hardy to approve our 011 dash.
Second.
Second for the motion. Second from Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, if we could go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daley,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner, Assemblywoman Krasner, Assemblywoman Wheeler.
No, I'm voting no on this.
Thank you. Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Yes.
Chair Canizaro.
Yes.
You have 11 in favor and 1 against.
Thank you. Motion carries and the regulation will be adopted. We'll move to the next regulation. And Senator Hardy, this was a request from you as well, R012-20 from the State Board of Health as well. And so will turn it over to you for any additional follow-up questions on that one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was interested in the verbiage that talks about when somebody is admitted, they can only be admitted after everything's said and done by the psychiatrist, as opposed to somebody else who may have privileges. So I guess I'd like to hear the rationale for why, quote, just a psychiatrist approves.
Thank you again, Dr. Hardy and Chair Canizaro. This is Stephen Wood with DPBH. I'm going to have to again defer to Dr. Raven for that question. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Leon Raven, Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Once again, Senator Hardy, if you could point out to me a specific section of the regulation that you have concern.
I would be looking at upon conclusion of the hearing, and I have to say it's on page 6, subsection 5. And the says upon conclusion of the hearing, the committee may recommend approving the request to involuntarily administer psychotropic medicine to the patient only if the member of the committee who is a psychiatrist or at least one other member determine that the patient presents a substantial likelihood of serious harm to himself or herself or others as determined pursuant to.
Thank you, Senator Hardy. Again, it's Dr. Leon Raven for the record. I would like to indicate that the committee, according to this regulation, consists of 3 members, and one of those 3 members must be a psychiatrist. And the intent of this regulation, what you quoted, that section is to make sure that when majority of the committee, which is 2 out of 3 members, agree to proceed with involuntarily administering psychotropic medications, that at least one of those two members of the committee in the majority is a psychiatrist. So
How is
if
that going?
the psychiatrist is in a
Can that-
position, then two other. Go ahead, Senator.
Can that be done in the rurals by telehealth, or how does my rural population that doesn't have a psychiatrist deal with somebody who needs to be protected from themselves or protect them from somebody else?
Thank you, Senator Hardy, for this question. Again, it's Dr. Leon Raven for the record. This regulation is only intended for facilities that are able to conduct the process of review of involuntary administration medication internally. For those facilities that are too small, they will continue with their current process. So if I may draw your attention to section, sorry. I apologize. 1 second. I have
That was section 13 that we were on.
Right. But there is an earlier section in the regulation that speaks that facilities or that are not able to do the internal process, internal review, should continue with the current court hearings as currently established process. I apologize. I will give you a specific reference to this document in a second.
So there is a mechanism that we can have.
Section 8, actually on page 3, says if a public or private mental health facility has not established the procedures set forth in sections 9 through 14 inclusive of this regulation, psychotropic medication must not be administered to the patient without consent unless the patient has been admitted involuntarily and the practitioner who is the primary responsible for treatment patient obtains from the court that order. So section 8 actually outlines the process for those facilities that are not able to pursue internal review of the application for involuntary administration of the medications.
So the court, meaning the judge, who isn't a doctor, can determine if the person, if she's convinced that the doctor says, I've got to do something, the court, meaning the judge, can say, yes, you can go ahead and do something.
For the record, this is Dr. Leon Raven, Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Yes, you are correct. So presently the process involves court review. So the same court that orders involuntary admission also reviews the request for involuntary administration of the medication. However, based on the U.S. Supreme Court decisions, institutions that are able to arrange for internal review of the request may do so with the process outlined in this regulation.
How do they do it now?
Currently, they go through the court. So regardless of whether or not the facility is able to conduct internal reviews, all those decisions are strictly within court's jurisdiction. However, with this regulation, facilities that are able to arrange for internal review would be able to do that internally.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raven. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional questions from members of the commission?
Move to approve.
And I'm not seeing any other additional questions from members of the commission. We do have a motion from Senator Hardy to approve R012-20. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
A second from is that Assemblywoman Carlton, I think I heard.
Yes.
Fantastic. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could, we'll do a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes. Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner, Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Yes.
Chair Canizara.
Yes.
It is unanimous.
Thank you. Motion carries and the regulation is adopted. Our final regulation for consideration is R018-20, which was a request by Assemblyman Daly. So Assemblyman Daly, if you want to go ahead for the State Environmental Commission, go ahead and ask your questions and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is in section 10, subsection 3. Just wanted to get some clarification on why C and G, subsection 3, wouldn't require a new notice when it says C is a material modification that significantly deviates from the previously approved design during construction. Now, I can understand when you maybe just change design and construction wouldn't impact the overall project that would require a new hearing, but wanted to get clarification on that. But G, where it says they change to the operating plan, if the change alters the potential to degrade the waters of the state, why would that not need to go through a new hearing if it's potentially going to degrade the water of the state? So I was curious on those two things, quickly, if you can give some explanation or with that new language that's being added. Assuming somebody's out there listening.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Joe Sawyer. I'm the Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Mining Regulation and Reclamation. Could you just state your question for me again one more time, specifically what you're looking for?
Yes, it was in section 10, subsection 3, examples of modifications to the engineering design of facility which do not constitute a major or minor modification and do not require a new public notice pursuant to subsection 1. And then specifically was the changes where it says there's a material modification that significantly deviates from the previously approved design during construction. And then I said, I understand if a change in a design and construction that might be significant may not change the nature of the overall facility and what they're doing. But then in subsection G as well, where it says a change in the operating plan, if the change alters the potential to degrade the waters of the state, why would those not need additional notice and hearing if there are significant changes?
Well, basically, we're looking at the potential to degrade waters of the state, and yeah, so I don't know if you want to jump in or I'm not sure what I can give to complete this. Hey, go ahead.
Hello, Greg Lovato with NDEP. NDP administrator. And I think what we're really trying to cover here is just generally these are engineering design changes. We're not really talking about increasing the potential of waters to degrade the state. Sometimes, if we get an engineering design change in and they're changing material, we normally don't subject, material, actual, the type of equipment they use. That type of modification is normally not subject to public review and comment. Ordinarily, the design itself is normally just subject to an engineering design review, but actual comments on, the type of material used are not normally subject to public comment. And I think we were just trying to, in this section, clarify that those would not be subject to public comment and review. There would be, a lot of time spent on, major modifications, major facility expansions, but most of the time engineering design itself doesn't get subjected to public comment and review. And I think that's what we're trying to just clarify here, is that those types of changes would not be subject to that public notice and review.
And would that be in regard to subsection C when you're talking about construction changes? Now I understand if I'm going to have an open pit mine, or I'm going to have an underground mine or whatever, and I'm going to have a processing mill above ground, and they say, hey, well, I was going to use this type of processing mill and I want to use a different one, same location, same footprint, same deal. If they were making that type of a change to construction, I can potentially understand that. But if they were going to say, hey, well, we want to double it and have a second one and various things, and you're saying that's not subject to additional notice and review. And then when I read, and I want you to talk to me back, or respond to that. But when I read G, so it says, and this is not going to be subject to additional review. It says a change to the operating plans, right? So reads to me that if there's a change to operating plans, and then it says if the change alters the potential to degrade the waters of the state. So it would say that any other change to the plans, if it's going to change the air quality, if it's going to change the footprint, if it's going to change underground to underground and surface, all those would be subject, but only if it's going to degrade the water that it's not subject. So it's either bad language or it's unclear, or you're specifically saying, you can do what you want if it's going to degrade the water, but anything else you have to go to a hearing. So it doesn't read correctly to me. You tell me if I'm reading it wrong, but it doesn't. It says they only are exempt if it's going to degrade water.
Yeah, again, for the record, this is Joe Sawyer, Bureau Chief with the Bureau of Mining. No, I think the intent here is just looking at minor modifications that are the lowest level for engineering design of a facility. And I think part of this, you would have to look at what constitutes a major modification and what constitutes a minor modification, and really look at all that in total. And so some of the things that you described, if they were to change facilities, that would most definitely rise to the level of a major modification which would require a public notice. And say even if you had a milling facility and you added a new circuit or a different processing circuit, might rise to the level of a minor modification. So really these here relate just to engineering design changes, which is our lowest level of modification.
Okay, and I can read in subsection 1, and that's what subsection 3 refers back to if there was changes in the modification, design, and engineering. I can accept your answer. I think you guys are trying to do the job and be fair to everybody on those things, and then not have additional burdens. And I know it can be a lengthy process to get approvals and various things. But I was just curious about those two in particular. I mean, because it uses the term in C that significantly deviates, not subject, and then degrading the water quality. And that's where I was there. So then it's not totally subjective. There's going to be some standards that you have in other parts of your regulation that's going to determine whether it's a design modification or some other type of modification on that, and whether or not you have to go back to a hearing. So I think that clarifies it. When you put it together, that I just wanted to be sure that it's only to design modifications and various things on that. So thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, if I could add one more. This is Greg Lovato again for the record. Thank you, Assemblyman Daly. Yeah, I think actually this whole side of the regulation that we're introducing here, we're trying to make sure that, you know, these engineering design modifications that relate to material selection and specific design choices, that those are specifically subject to review and approval by the agency. That we're trying to clarify for applicants, yes, if you change this, yes, if you change that, that's subject to additional review and approval by NDEP. It's just not subject to an outside public notice, review, and comment again. So this was really just trying to clarify what the process is going to look like. So this isn't a, you know, something that currently that we would require, you know, some type of public notice and comment. You know, that's really reserved for facility applications and major modifications. So this is just clarifying that for this additional level of review, we're requesting explicit approval authority for engineering design changes that are material. Those are the ones that applicant knows ahead of time now, more transparently. They have to come back to the agency for review and approval. And so this is, as opposed to being a decrease in regulation, it's actually a clarification just to make sure that everyone's on the same page with respect to this. So I think you're following along with what our intent was here.
Yeah, and understood, and thank you for the explanation. That's why I asked the question. And I agree with you. The burden to get some of these things through is substantial. It takes years, sometimes public comment and then arguments and various things back and forth. It can take a substantial period of time. And I do, with the explanation, understand that this would be additional review if they gone through all of that public processing and then want to make an engineering or design change that has to go back through review, but doesn't have to go through the possibly year-long process of public comment and various things. People should do their homework and get their first bite at the apple. And if it is significant, then I suppose they can always still challenge those approvals if they chose. But with that, Madam Chair, I don't have any other questions, and I am comfortable with the understanding of it now, and would make a motion when you're ready.
Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Seeing none, I do have a motion to approve from Assemblyman Daly, Regulation R018-20. Is there a second? Second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could, we'll do a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton?
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly?
Yes.
Speaker Frierson?
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner?
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler?
Yes.
Senator Dennis?
Yes.
Senator Hammond?
Yes.
Senator Hardy?
Yes.
Senator Settlemeyer?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty?
Yes.
Chair Canizaro?
Yes.
And it is unanimous.
Fantastic. The regulation does pass, and that will conclude our review of regulations under section B. We are going to go ahead and move, and thank you again to all the agency heads who are here with us and agency representatives who've been able to answer all of our questions. We really appreciate you being with us today. We're going to go ahead and move to item number C on our agenda, which is a request for approval of extension of deadlines for interim and statutory commissions or committees. Rather, this item, of course, relates to deadlines that we have for completing interim studies and submitting BDRs requested by those committees to the Legislative Counsel Bureau. This item was requested by the director of the Legislative Counsel Bureau, and so we'll turn it over, Ms. Erdos, if you could go ahead and present this item to the commission.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item relates to the deadlines for completing the work of the interim and statutory committee studies this interim for submitting the BDR requests that come from those interim committees. You may recall that at the June 5th meeting of this commission, 6 committees asked for and were granted extensions of their deadlines for completing their work this interim and for submitting the BDRs to the Legislative Council. Those requests were all based on delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Since then, in addition to difficulties related to the pandemic, we've also had 2 special sessions over a period of about 3 weeks. And these unique circumstances have now affected all of the interim committees and for the most part. And it's the reason that I'm suggesting that the Legislative Commission extend both the deadlines for completing the interim and statutory studies and the deadline for submitting any BDRs that might be approved by those committees to the Legislative Council. I believe that a reasonable deadline would be September 30th, 2020, but the LCB is willing to make any deadline work. We're just looking at trying to end this process in time for us to recover and be ready for the legislative session and for any BDRs coming from these committees to be, for there to be time for those to be drafted. So that's our request on this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the commission, any questions or discussion? Senator Hardy, please.
So the obvious question is, does that extend the legislators' deadlines for BDRs? I'm smiling.
Not that we intended, but
still the same deadline, Senator. Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission? And I'm not seeing any. Oh, sorry, Senator Sotomayor, please.
Hey, Mrs. Chair, Madam Chair. I was curious, though. It does bring forth a valid point, I believe, that Senator Hardy discusses. Legislators still had to deal with a special session and still had to operate under the deadlines or lose their BDRs. So what's the difference?
I'm not sure if you're looking to me for an answer. I'm not the Legislative Council anymore. No, but the difference here is that, at least in my mind, for whatever it's worth, is that this is a coordinated effort between 3 or 4 groups of people for each one of these committees. We have the staff from the Legislative Council Bureau, as well as including research, fiscal, or legal staff, or all of them, plus the staff for BPS to make sure that these meetings can happen. And then we have all the legislators who do drive this, the chairs of each one of these committees, but also all the members. And so getting all this done within the time of the requirements there is I just don't think it's possible at this point. So that's hence the recommendation that's on the agenda today.
Appreciate that. As a follow-up, would the bill drafts in these individual committees, now they're going to be delayed, will priority be given to individuals who get their bills in first, or will these committees be given the priority they had in the past?
Actually, the statute requires that after a certain date, I think it's in this fall, all of the legislators' BDRs be given priority. So it's up to the legal division to get all these things done within the time allowed, which is going to be very difficult this time, especially with a fairly new staff. But I'm betting on them to make this work.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Seeing none, I would accept a motion to approve the request for the extension as outlined by Ms. Erdos.
So moved.
So moved from Assemblywoman Carlton. Is there a second from Senator Hardy? Any discussion on the motion?
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Erdos, for bringing this forward. We know Broadcast Services has done an excellent job, and we know with all these meetings trying to be scheduled, we're bumping into each other all the time, doing just one a day. We might end up having to do 2 in a day. So I appreciate you giving everyone the opportunity to get their work done. That being said, the chairs need to put it into high gear and get their meetings scheduled and get their work done. The sooner their work gets in, the faster it'll get drafted. So hopefully they'll get that message.
All right, could not agree more, Assemblywoman. And again, I know we've kind of all said it, but a huge thank you to all of the very hardworking staff who've been able to facilitate this new way of us having meetings and being able to conduct our business. And yes, it is incumbent upon all of us as legislators to make sure that we are getting our work done in a timely fashion. And again, just a huge thank you to all of the really wonderful and brilliant folks who are helping to make this work and get us up and going for all of these meetings. We truly appreciate it. With that, Madam Secretary, if you could please go ahead and open the, we'll do a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
thank you. Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty, Vice Chair Ratty, Chair Canizaro,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty,
Well, I see her on there. I think we may have lost her momentarily.
have 11 in favor.
Thank you. Motion carries and those deadlines will be extended. And again, just I think we all, to the Assemblywoman's point, need to make sure that as chairs and members of committee, we're all on top of it, and certainly to our chairs outside of the Legislative Commission to make sure that we're getting our work done. But thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number D on our agenda, which is a request for approval of session hires. We, of course, all know that there is a tremendous amount of work that does go into making our legislative sessions run and to facilitating each of those. And each session, there are a number of employees who are hired ahead of session who are asked to begin before we actually start to help the Legislative Council Bureau get prepared and carry out some of those very many tasks that are necessary before we begin meeting. And so I am going to again turn it over to Ms. Erdos as she has this request outlined for all of us and can talk more about the early session hires for the next legislative session. Ms. Erdos, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a chart of proposed session hires for which we're seeking approval today in the materials for this item in the packets and also on the legislature's website under the tab for this meeting. In addition to the normal session hires, that we would have, and those are all the things that we know we're going to need, and we're asking for approval, and we're going forward with those pretty much for certain. There's some anomalies today that I just sort of wanted to explain, and I'm happy to answer questions on any of these. Actually, the first sort of oddity is probably the 32 BPS intern camera operators, and what we're trying to do, just generally, the LCB that is to plan ahead for the 21 session, and we believe that to properly do that, to ensure that we're ready for whatever happens here, we have determined that we need to work with all of our folks and the two houses to figure out some contingency plans. We don't know yet. Perhaps it'll be just a normal session with no virtual meetings. It could be, I guess, theoretically completely virtual, where you as legislators are working from your offices. But the best guess that I've seen is probably somewhere in the middle, where we would have some virtual meetings. So we would only hire these positions if they were needed to allow us to do, frankly, what that would be for is if you wanted to do most or all of the committee meetings during the legislative session every day, in the same way that you've been doing them, where you can have up to 8 or 10 going at the same time in a day. And to do that with the system that we have currently, which is what we'll be working with for session, we would need this number of BPS camera folks in order to do the things that you've heard, like during the special session, you heard it's the camera folks who are working there each like all the time that you're in those meetings to make sure that everything's working right, but also to call upon say members of the public or the Zoom people on Zoom to come forward, and it's the whole press *9 to raise your hand, that kind of stuff. All of those people are what we're talking about here. And not all of them would need to be on site. If you were, you might have recognized some of the voices during the special session. A number of those were the folks who actually work in the Las Vegas office. And they were working from home, as were some of the folks that work in Carson City, working from home, and they're able to do that on their computer and provide these services. So that's really what we're talking about here. And again, the reason that we'd like to get approval for the amount that we think we would be needed is so that we can continue with those plans and know that if we do need to trigger that plan, that we will have our resources available. But we would not hire them until we've determined that we need to go in this fashion. Another, I think, sort of anomaly is under the director's office. I added 3 human resources trainers. I didn't really know what else to call them. It's probably not too accurate, but what I know now is that we have a number of senior people in the Council Bureau who are eligible to retire and who are truly thinking about it. And so if we get some number of those retirements right before session, I'd like to be able to contract with at least a few of them to come back to help train their replacements, especially in divisions where we don't have a lot of backup for those folks. So that's what those 3 positions would be used for, should that come to pass. And I think the rest of these things that you see there are pretty much de rigueur for a session, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about these positions.
Any questions or comments from members of the commission?
Madam Chair, Senator Dennis.
Yes, please.
So, Brenda, on the 32 intern camera operators, what do we normally have in the past? What have we used?
Sorry, all you had to do is say interim cameras and I couldn't find my unmute. I apologize. We normally add 3 to 5, I believe, for the session, for this expensive session. And then actually some of those people end up staying and filling other positions that become available.
So then you're looking at, you kind of cut out a little bit, but I thought I heard 3 to 5. Is that right?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, so this is quite a bit more. And like you said, you wouldn't hire these until we got closer to session. I mean, you'd hire some, but you'd wait to see what we needed. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That's all I had. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So, Ms. Erdos, do you see these positions being north and south end since they can work remotely? The positions would be posted at both ends of the state?
Yes, that's our intent. And again, as we get closer to this, we would have to formalize those plans. But that's worked in the past for these 2 special sessions. So I don't see why not.
I think that's a great idea. We have a lot of very well qualified folks that choreographed and did shows on the Strip that won't be working for a while. So they might be interested in something like this. So I think you would have a wealth of people available to you in Southern Nevada who might be interested in this type of thing. Thank you.
Additional questions from members of the commission? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to approve the session hires as outlined by Ms. Erdos? A motion from
move for approval.
A motion from Assemblywoman Carlton. I did see a second from Senator Hardy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could, we'll go forward with a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton.
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly.
Yes.
Senator Frierson.
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner.
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler.
Yes.
Senator Dennis.
Yes.
Senator Hammond.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Settlemeyer.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty. Vice Chair Ratty. Chair Canizaro.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty. You have all in favor.
Motion carries, and those will be approved. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, item number E, the request for approval of transfer of funds appropriated for fiscal year 2019-2020 to fiscal year 2020-2021. Ms. Erdos can go ahead and I think walk us through this item. And then I believe also Mr. Kompotok is available if we should have any additional questions. So Ms. Erdos, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you indicated, these requests were from the Fiscal Analysis Division, and there was one for the continued improvements in the budget accounting system of Nevada, which is Basin. I believe those changes became necessary because of changes that were made on the executive branch system that it parallels, and then the conference room chairs and the conference room table. The delay in there, it was because of the COVID, and so that was fully intended, and I think would, but for that reason, have all been made in the correct year, but because we were asking to move these amounts to the year that we're currently in now. And as the chair indicated, Mark Kropotkin is, I believe, up on here too. And he is probably more able to answer any questions that you might have about this.
Do we have any questions, members of the commission? We'll start with Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the conference room table and the chairs, are they designed to be 6 feet apart or social distancing? Or where are we going to put the conference room chairs and table if we don't have a conference room big enough? Or do we?
So, this is Mark Kropotkin. The chairs were ordered as replacement chairs for some very old chairs that we have in the conference room. The conference room is not designed for social distancing at this time, but the chairs were ordered and budgeted and ordered prior to COVID coming into place. And we do use the conference rooms just for far fewer people than we normally would, and the chairs are necessary for that purpose. The table itself, we're looking to get a larger table, which it was not originally intended to be such, but it would lend itself more to social distancing with a larger conference room table in our largest conference room in the fiscal analysis division.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional questions, comments from members of the commission? Okay, I am not seeing any. I would accept a motion to approve the transfer of funds as outlined.
Move to approve.
A motion from Senator Hardy. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Second from Assemblywoman Carlton. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Madam Secretary, if you could please go ahead and call the roll.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty, Chair Canizaro,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty. You have 11 in.
Thank you. And motion carries. The request will be approved. We will move on to the next item on our agenda. It's item number F, which is appointments of members to committees and similar entities. We have some members to be appointed to both the Nevada Commission on Minority Affairs and the Advisory Council on Mortgage Investments and Mortgage Lending. Members should have the information regarding these appointments in your meeting packet under separate tabs for each of those. That information is also available on the legislative website for those of you who are joining us virtually and would like to take a look at those meeting materials. They contain the information for both of the appointments to those, well, for the appointments to both of those particular entities. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Erdos to walk us through that information. Ms. Erdos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is the first thing under that tab is a letter to the chair from Emily Koo, the management analyst for the Commission on Minority Affairs. And there are 2 vacant positions and 3 reappointments that they're asking for. So they're asking for the appointment of 2 new members. And those, they're listed there as the first 2 members listed, Yvette Martel de Luca and Angelica Villardo. And then there are the next three members are asking to be reappointed for their second terms. What follows this in our packets and in the information that's on the website is the resumes of those people. I think that's everything that's in here. That you just need to determine whether you wish to appoint these two new members and reappoint the three other members that are listed there.
Any, thank you, Ms. Erdos. We appreciate it. Any discussion or questions from members of the commission?
Senator Dennis.
Senator Dennis, please.
Just a quick question. I think it's Ms. Wu. My question was for her, the process that she went through to get submissions for the position. If she's on, I don't know if she's on.
I don't know that we have her with us, but
if we don't, I'm okay with moving forward. I can always follow up later. I just want to, when we do these kind of appointments, I just wanted to make sure we had on, how we go through selecting individuals for these different positions.
and I don't know if Ms. Erdos has any additional information on that particular process. I know that this was certainly information that was provided to us by the Department of Business and Industry. Ms. Koo had sent over the letter along with all of the letters of recommendation for the individuals who had either applied to this, and I won't speak out of turn, but I believe there is an application process that must be accompanied by some of these other items that are included in your meeting packet as well, in terms of appointing those members. But I don't know, Ms. Erdos, you have any additional information on how that process works?
Madam Chair, I apologize. I do not, and I haven't been involved in this process before, but I think that what we'll do in the future for these sorts of appointments is ask that question and ask them to include that in the material that they provide to us.
Additional questions or comments from members of the commission?
Madam Chair, I'm willing to make a motion. I think they're both highly qualified, great candidates. So if we're ready for motion, I would make that motion.
I'm not seeing any additional questions or comments from members of the commission. So I do have a motion from Senator Dennis to approve the appointments to the Commission on Minority Affairs and the Advisory Council on Mortgage Investments and Mortgage Lending. Is there a second from the commission? A second from Senator Hardy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then we will go ahead and Madam Secretary, if you could, we will get.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemeyer, Senator Settlemeyer, Vice
Yes.
Chair Ray, Chair Canizaro,
Yes.
Senator Settlemeyer,
Yes.
thank you. Vice Chair Ratty, do you have?
Thank you. Motion carries and the appointments are approved.
Madam Chair, this is Senator Dennis. I just realized I wasn't clear, but I think everybody understood this, that we were approving the 2 new ones plus the reappointment of the other 3. Is that, I don't
Yes.
think that, I think,
That's what I seconded.
okay, thank you.
Yes, yes. The new appointments as well as the reappointments for the other 3 on the Commission on Minority Affairs, and then the 2 on the Commission on Mortgage Lending. Okay, that brings us to item number 5 on our agenda for the legislative auditor. The next 2 items will be presented. Oh, excuse me. I see Miss Erdos.
Sorry,
No, that's okay.
I apologize. We have a second group of appointments to make. Got it, sorry. We have a second group of 2 appointments to make, or reappointments to make to the Advisory Council on Mortgage Investments and Mortgage Lending. Today, if you look in the packet, you have a letter from Kathy Sheehy asking for those Adam Horowitz and Alicia Taylor to be reappointed. Behind that letter is a letter from Adam Horowitz asking to be reappointed, and then also Alicia Taylor's resume and a similar request to be reappointed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I apologize. I believe we had done that under the same motion, but it would require a separate motion, Ms. Erdos?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I should have run through those in the beginning.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So we will go ahead then and consider the appointments for the mortgage Advisory Council on Mortgage Investments and Mortgage Lending. Were there any additional questions from members of the committee on those 2 reappointments? Seeing none, is there a motion to be made to approve the 2 reappointments as outlined in your meeting materials? I see a motion from Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, a second from Senator Hardy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could go ahead and we will do a roll call vote.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daley,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty, Chair Canizara,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty. You have 11.
Great. And that motion then will pass as well for the appointments for our reappointment rather of the members for the Advisory Council on Mortgage Investments and Mortgage Lending. And that will conclude our action on the appointments for those committees. We will move on now to item number 5 under the legislative auditor. The next 2 items on our agenda will be presented by our very own legislative auditor, Dan Crossman, and we will turn it over to you to go through the 2 items under sub A and sub B. Mr. Crossman.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Canizaro and members of the Legislative Commission. For the record, Dan Crossman, Legislative Auditor. I have 2 quick items for your consideration today under agenda items 5A and 5B. Under tab 5, you'll see a letter from the Commission dated August 10th that requesting permission for the Audit Division to perform audits. The first paragraph in that letter pertains to agenda item 5A, Schedule 1, which is on the next page, lists the audits we currently have in progress. In accordance with NRS 218E, 5.205, we are requesting approval to continue these audits, as we will not be able to present all of them to the audit subcommittee of the Legislative Commission before the start of the 2021 legislative session. As a result, we respectfully request that the commission approve continuation of these audits under agenda item 5A. Thank you.
Questions or concerns from members of the commission for agenda item number 5A? I'm not seeing any.
Move to approve.
There was a motion from Senator Hardy to approve the request for an extension, and I see a second from Assemblyman Daly. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could please go ahead and call the roll.
Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krausner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond, Senator Hammond, Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty, Chair Canizaro,
Yes.
Senator Hammond, Vice Chair Ratty. You have 10 in favor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And the motion passes. Mr. Crossman, we'll turn it back over to you under agenda item number 5B.
Great, thank you. Again, for the record, Dan Crossman, Legislative Auditor. Under agenda item 5B, pursuant to NRS 218.120, we are requesting approval of our biennial audit plan, which is included as Schedule 2 on the next page. With agencies that have multiple divisions or programs, it is possible that we will perform more than one audit of those agencies. The timing of the audits is contingent upon available staffing, resources, and may be impacted by additional audits placed upon the audit division by the Legislative Commission or by the legislature during the 2021 legislative session. The proposed audits were selected using a risk assessment process. This process includes various factors, including the length of time between audits, the size and complexity of the agency, nature of issues, and legislative interests. And with that, Madam Chair, I respectfully request approval of our biennial audit plan under agenda item 5B. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the commission?
If it's appropriate, I would move for approval, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I'm not seeing anybody requesting for comments or questions. So yes, we do, and we do have a motion from Assemblywoman Carlton to approve the request under 5B. And I see a second from Senator Hardy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could please go ahead and call the roll.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Carlton,
Yes.
Assemblyman Daly,
Yes.
Speaker Frierson,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Krausner,
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Hammond, Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ratty, Chair Canizaro,
Yes.
Senator Hammond, Vice Chair Ratty, and you have 10 in favor.
Thank you. And that request will be approved. Thank you, Mr. Crossman, for being here to walk us through those items under agenda item number 5. We appreciate it. We will now move The next item on our agenda, which is item number 6, it is a progress report regarding litigation. We are joined by Kevin Powers, our general counsel, who will provide us with a report regarding the various court cases involving the legislature that are currently in progress. Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Kevin Powers, LCB Legal General Counsel. LCB Legal will be reporting on 2 cases today because those are the 2 cases that we have developments in since the last Legislative Commission meeting. Both of these cases are related, so I will discuss them together. Those cases are Settlemyer versus State of Nevada, which is in the 1st Judicial District Court, and then State ex rel Canizaro versus 1st Judicial District Court, which is in the Nevada Supreme Court. This office discussed these cases extensively at the Legislative Commission meetings on December 30th, 2019, and on February 6th, 2020. So I will refer anyone back to those lengthy discussions in the minutes of those meetings. For today's report, I will provide a quick summary of the cases and focus on the Nevada Supreme Court's published opinion overturning the district court's order disqualifying LCB Legal as counsel for the legislative defendants. In the underlying case in the district court, the plaintiffs are challenging the constitutionality of Senate Bill number 542 and 551 of the 2019 legislative session. The plaintiffs claim that these bills created, generated, or increased public revenue and that they violated Article 4, Section 18 of the Nevada Constitution because the bills did not receive a 2/3 majority vote in the Senate. The plaintiffs include 8 senators, 8 members of the Senate, or 8 senators, who also known as the plaintiff senators, who voted against SB 542 and SB 551. The legislative defendants include Senator Canizaro in her official capacity as Senate Majority Leader and Claire Clift in her official capacity as Secretary of the Senate. In the district court, the plaintiff senators moved to disqualify LCB Legal from representing the legislative defendants in their official capacity as their statutorily authorized counsel under NRS 218F.720. The district court agreed with that motion and entered an order disqualifying LCB Legal. LCB Legal then filed a petition for writ of mandamus with the Nevada Supreme Court, challenging the district court's disqualification order. After LCB Legal filed the mandamus action, the Nevada Supreme Court issued an order which stayed all district court proceedings pending resolution of the mandamus action. The parties briefed the mandamus action and presented oral argument on February 11th, 2020, before the full 7-member Nevada Supreme Court. On June 26, 2020, the Nevada Supreme Court issued a published opinion and writ of mandamus overturning the disqualification order and lifting the stay. That opinion is in State ex rel Canizaro versus 1st Judicial District Court, 136 Nevada Advanced Opinion number 34, 2020. The Nevada Supreme Court's published opinion includes a discussion of several important principles governing the legal services provided by LCB Legal to legislators. Therefore, I will provide an extensive overview and synopsis of the published opinion. The Nevada Supreme Court found that LCB Legal's client is the legislature, and it represents individual legislators only in their official capacities as constituent members of the legislature acting on the legislature's behalf. The plaintiff senators sued Senator Canizaro and Secretary Clift in their official capacities for actions taken on behalf of the legislature related to the passage of the 2 Senate bills. And LCB Legal's defense of the senator and secretary was part of and ancillary to the defense of that legislation. But in challenging the legislation, the Nevada Supreme Court found that the plaintiff senators are not similarly acting on the legislature's behalf, and thus they are not considered LCB Legal's client in the situation of this litigation. Under NRS 218F.720, LCB Legal is authorized to represent the legislative defendants because they were sued in their official capacity to defend against claims challenging the constitutionality of legislation and to protect the institutional interest of the legislature. The district court characterized LCB, pardon me. The district court characterized LCB Legal's representation as picking sides, but that characterization is unfair and unsupported according to the Nevada Supreme Court, and counsel for the plaintiff senators acknowledged that oral argument that nothing in the record supports that LCB Legal picked sides or chose to represent the legislative defendants.
Instead, LCB Legal serves as nonpartisan legal counsel for the legislature acting through its duly authorized constituents. LCB Legal is not authorized to advocate against legislation or official legislative acts, and thus LCB Legal did not pick sides in this litigation. As counsel for the plaintiff senators acknowledged that oral argument, LCB Legal cannot take a position contrary to the legislature, and thus LCB Legal could not represent the plaintiff senators in the underlying litigation, even if Senator Cannizzaro and Secretary Cliff had not been named as defendants. LCB Legal's representation of the legislative defendants likewise does not damage its neutrality, as defending a bill's constitutionality is a public nonpartisan function. And pursuant to NRS 218 F720, LCB Legal would defend such a bill regardless of which political party is in the majority. Finally, the court found that the basis for LCB Legal's legal opinion regarding the 2/3 requirement was not political. And counsel for the plaintiff senators acknowledged that there was nothing improper about LCB Legal providing a legal opinion that was neutral to both the majority and minority leaders during the legislative session. Moreover, nothing in the record, briefs, or arguments suggests that LCB Legal cannot continue to give advice on bill drafts and provide legal opinions to both minority and majority members of the legislature in their roles as constituent members of the legislature, while also defending the constitutionality of legislation passed by the legislature that is presumed to be constitutional. Therefore, the Nevada Supreme Court issued a writ of mandamus directing the district court to vacate its order disqualifying LCB Legal. On July 9th, 2020, the district court entered that order and vacated the disqualification order. On August 13th, 2020, the district court approved a stipulation and order establishing a briefing schedule in the district court for the parties' dispositive motions on the underlying constitutional issue with regards to the 2/3 question. That briefing will be completed on September 14th, 2020, and then the district court will hear oral arguments regarding the parties' dispositive motions at the hearing in the Carson City Courthouse set for September 21st, 2020 at 1:30 p.m. And that is an overview of the two cases that have major developments in them since the last Legislative Commission meeting, Madam Chair, and I'm certainly open for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the commission? Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Powers. We appreciate your overview and explanation as always. We will now move to item number 7 on our agenda item. For those of you who are watching and joining with us online, this is now the second public comment offering that we will have for this meeting. If there's anyone who wishes to provide public comment, please refer to our agenda and call the number that is indicated on there. Once you have called in, you'll be informed by our broadcast production services when you have been connected and when it is your turn to speak. Again, comments are going to be limited to 2 minutes per person, but you, of course, may always submit additional comments to us in writing to be included in the record. And so at this point in time, I am going to turn this over to our broadcast production services staff to go ahead and queue up those calling in to speak. And they will, of course, again, inform you when it is your time, when it is your turn to speak. And then just another reminder, if you are going to be giving public comment, to please state and spell your name so that we will have that for the record. And now we'll turn it over to our broadcast production services.
Madam Chair, we're going to give the public 2 minutes to call in. Chair Canizaro. The public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time.
We thank you for being able and as always able to help facilitate not only our meetings but public participation as well. We will, with that, we will go ahead and close public comment at this point in time under item number 7. And the final item on our agenda is agenda item number 8, which is our adjournment. Seeing no additional business before the commission at this point, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, commission members, for being here today, and thank you to all of our wonderful staff for being able to not only facilitate our meeting, but answer all of our questions and make sure that we can conduct our business safely. And we'll see, I'm sure we'll see each other soon. Thank you, everybody.